Again, my name is Leonardo Lechuga. I grew up here in Aurora, and I grew up in a lifestyle that is not fitting for any child. Unfortunately, I've gone through things that no child should go through, and I share my story. Normally, I go to high schools and middle schools and share my story and try to get kids to understand that the choices you make can impact your future. When I come and I talk to you guys are the future. You guys are the future probation officers, law enforcement, social workers, or whatever you decide to choose to be. You're going to run into somebody that's gone through what I've gone through, possibly. And I want you guys to hear my story so that you'll be able to make better decisions about how to help this person. Because sometimes the only thing that people see is whatever it is this person did. And they don't look at the background of how did we get to this point. And for me, I'm going to share you how we got to that point. I grew up in Aurora, and I grew up in a family where my dad was a gangster. My dad was a real gangster, like the kind you see on TV. My dad was a drug dealer. My dad was a drug addict. So I was exposed to drugs and violence at a very, very young age. I don't remember anything from when I was 4 years old except one incident. When I was 4 years old, I watched my parents get home invaded. Because my dad was a drug dealer, my dad had somebody wanting to rob him. So I'm a little kid. My dad gets home, and there's two people waiting for him in the garage with a pistol. They put a pistol to his head and made him open the door. They came inside to rob us. My mom was home. My older brother, my older sister were upstairs sleeping, and these two guys came in to rob my dad. And they tell my dad, um, "Where's the drugs and the money?" And my dad tells them, "I'm telling you nothing." They tied my mom and dad up with an extension cord, and I'm sitting there in the living room with my mom and dad tied up. I'm 4 years old, and I'm watching what's going on. I remember the two guys. Later on, in talking to my mom about this, my mom tells me, "Yeah, that guy was talking about killing us because they couldn't find the drugs and the money." And fortunately, the other guy's like, "Man, that's not what we're here for. If we can't find the drugs and the money, let's get out of here." What if that other guy wasn't there and that guy was bent on finding drugs and money, or are we killing you? My dad had drugs and money, but he wasn't going to tell him. That's the type of gangster my dad was. He wasn't going to tell him where the drugs and money were at. Fortunately, they left. Otherwise, I'd have been a 4 year old orphan. They left, but I'm a 4 year old kid trying to help untie my mom and my dad. That was the first thing I remember about being exposed to violence. But it didn't stop there. When I was 5 years old, my dad went to prison. My dad was a heroin addict also. One day, my dad's getting high. Him and my mom get into an argument. My sister runs and calls the police. When the police get there, my dad don't want to go to jail. So instead of cooperating, my dad grabs his rifle, runs out the back door. And when the police chase him, my dad turns around and shot a police officer. The officer didn't die, but my dad goes to trial, and he tried to argue he was so high when this happened that he didn't know what he was doing. They didn't go for it. My dad got convicted. My dad got 14 years to life. So now I'm 5 years old and my dad's in prison. It still didn't stop. My dad was a gangster. My dad was a drug dealer in prison, but now he's involving my mom. My dad got my mom bringing him drugs into the prison so he could sell drugs in prison. My mom, a little old lady who never smoked, never drank, never done a drug in her life, but she married a gangster. So now my mom is bringing my dad drugs in prison. So my dad's still selling drugs. My whole little life, I remember going to the prisons every weekend to visit my dad. As a kid, a little kid, the types of people my dad are introducing me to is gang leaders, these gang leaders that are in prisons. My dad's gone, but now my dad has my mom selling drugs. So as a little kid, I'm seeing my mom, who again never drank, never smoked, never done a drug in her life. She's doing as she's told. She's selling drugs for my dad while he's in prison. So we're seeing dope fiends coming in and out of the house. When I was about 8 years old, my mom left us, me and my little brother, When she was pregnant, she had my little brother. 4 or 5 years later, she left us with my uncle to babysit us while she went to do laundry or something. He's also a drug addict. So we're sitting there, and I remember me and my little brother are sitting there listening to the radio, and my uncle goes in the bathroom to get high with a friend of the family. They go in the bathroom. They're in the bathroom for a while. I'm a little kid. I got to use the bathroom. So I go knock on the door. They don't open the door. So I'm a little kid. I don't know no better. I go sit down and I'm waiting my turn. After a little while, I see this guy coming out the bathroom. He's kind of in a hurry, but he leaves. My uncle's still in the bathroom. I got to use the bathroom. So a little while later, I go knock on the door. He don't answer the door, but I got to go to the bathroom bad. There's only one bathroom in the house. I walked in the bathroom, saw my uncle on his knees, slumped over, overdosed. I'm a little kid. I don't know what's going on. I go shake my uncle. He don't get up. I grabbed him by his hair. I lifted him up. He had already vomited on the floor. He was dead. My uncle was laying there, face down, with a needle sticking out of his arm. I'm trying to wake him up. He don't wake up. I remember running to the phone. I called my grandma's house. Hey, my uncle Adolfo, he's in the bathroom. He's dead. Is my mom there? I'll never forget my older cousin. He was probably about 14, 15 years old at the time. He answers the phone. He's like, nah, she's not here, and hung up. Like he didn't hear nothing I said. Nah, she's not here, and hung up. So now we're sitting in the house, me and my little brother, with my dead uncle in the bathroom. We don't know what else to do. The only thing I knew to do was pick up that phone and try to call my mom. We're sitting in the house for hours. A couple hours go by. I go back to the phone. I call my grandma's house again. Same cousin answers the phone. Hey, my uncle Adolfo, he's in the bathroom. He's dead. Is my mom there? Nah, she's not here. Hangs up the phone. We sat in that house with my dead uncle in the bathroom for hours. I remember it was dark before my mom got home. My mom got home. She didn't freak out. She went in the bathroom, pulled the needle out of his arm, went around the house, got all the other drug paraphernalia. I remember she threw it in a brown paper bag, crumpled it up, and threw it in my neighbor's bushes before she called the police. Police came, got my uncle. As I grew up a little bit, I started replaying that in my head and thinking, why did my uncle have to die? Somebody else was with him. That guy that ran out of the house was with my uncle. That guy either killed my uncle or left him there to die. I don't know. But I know that when he left, they were in there getting high. My uncle couldn't get high by himself. My uncle only had one arm. He couldn't stick that needle in his arm by himself. So that guy had to have been there when that needle went in his arm. So he either killed him or he saw him ODing and left him because he was scared. He had a choice to make, help this guy or get out of there. He chose to get out of there. My uncle died. 8 years old, I'm being exposed to that. It ain't over. A couple years later, me and my little brother are sitting in the living room. A dolphin comes by to get some drugs from my mom. My mom, like I said, little old lady this big, ain't got no business selling drugs. Guy comes, asks for the drugs. I remember hearing a scream, hey, kind of turned around startled. My mom standing in the doorway like this. The dude took the drugs and ran. What was my mom going to do about it? My mom, like I said, little old lady this big, she wasn't going to do nothing about it. That guy just robbed my mom. 12 years old, my dad comes home from prison. Want no rehabilitation. My dad came home from prison, right back to being a drug dealer. I'm 12 years old. My dad comes home from prison. My dad assumes that I'm already on drugs and I'm already in gangs. Why? Because everybody in my family was in gangs or drug dealers. So I'm 12 years old and my dad assumes that I'm already in a gang and I'm already on drugs. He starts taking me with him when he goes to visit his friends, when he goes to hang out at the bars. And I remember going with him to his friends' houses and watching them get high. I remember watching my dad get shot heroin in his neck because all of his other veins were already shot. So he's getting shot by one of his friends in his neck. I'm 12 years old seeing this. At the time, I don't know that this is abnormal. This is all I've seen all my life. At this time, I was starting to try to hang out with my older brother who was already in a gang. He was already at junior high. And when I'm trying to go to the hood to hang out with these guys, they're running me off. Little chubby kid, youngest one in the hood, they literally were kicking me out. Get out of here. But when I had drugs, they let me hang out. When I had weed, they let me hang out. So I would go with my dad to his friend's house. His friends used to give me weed. So I'd take that weed, I'd go to the hood, and I'd get to hang out because I had weed. 13 years old, I joined the gang. At 13 years old, they finally let me join the gang, and it just started a cycle of being in and out of jail. 13 years old, I got locked up for the first time. I remember partying at my grandma's house. They had a car parked outside. And I remember we were partying that night. I fell asleep in the car. 7 o'clock in the morning, somebody's knocking on the car window. Hey, it's one of the older guys. And he's like, hey, you want to do a hit? Sure, where? He's like, down the street. We walked down the street all the way to the end of the street, and we broke into a house. We break into these people's house. We're stealing all their stuff. I remember we put all their stuff in laundry baskets. We're coming out of the house. There's a little old lady sitting in her window drinking coffee. It so happened to be that that house belonged to her daughter. She saw us coming out of her daughter's house with laundry baskets full of their stuff. She had two older sons. They were about 18 to 20 years old. She tells her sons, hey, there's two guys coming out of your sister's house. Go see what's going on. I remember we coming out the door. These two guys come running from across the street. Hey, what are you guys doing? We took off running. My friend got away. I was the little chubby kid. I got caught. They beat me up. I remember I was crying. They beat me up a little bit till the police got there. I'm crying when the police got there. Police get there like, hey, these guys, tell them what happened. When they tell them what happened, they describe my friend. My friend had a birthmark on his forehead, right in the middle of his forehead. So they knew who I was with because they just described them. And so they come to me like, hey, tell me who you're with. You're going to jail. I was by myself. One thing I learned in the hood is you don't tell. I learned that from my dad also. You don't tell. So these guys done beat me up. Police threatened to take me to jail. I was by myself. They're like, tell us who you're with or you're going to St. Charles. I knew what St. Charles was. I had heard about St. Charles. The friend that I was with just got out of St. Charles. I don't want to go to St. Charles. But I'm not telling on my friends. I was by myself. They said, tell us who you were with or you're going to St. Charles. And when you get to St. Charles, they're going to rape you. You tell that to a 13-year-old kid. I was scared. But I'm not telling on my friend. So they take me to jail. I go to the youth home. I never made it to St. Charles, but I went to the youth home. I sat in the youth home for 30 days. They gave me probation. I get out of the youth home. I go back to the hood. Nobody in the hood said, hey, you just got out, man. Maybe you should chill. You just got out. Maybe you should just settle down. Nope. Instead, I get out and I got praise from everybody in the hood because now I'm the little shorty that didn't tell. So instead of getting corrected, I got praised. That just made things worse. Now I'm in and out of jail. My whole juvenile life, in and out for fighting, for truancy, for battery. I remember I was about 14 years old, maybe 15 already. I go to court. My lawyer literally quit on me. My lawyer comes to my parents because my dad had money. He's buying private lawyers. Lawyer comes to my dad and says, Mr. Lechuga, I can't take your money no more. I can't help him. He's going down. Judge already said if I see him again, he's going to St. Charles. So he's like, so I'm not going to take your money no more. You're better off using a public defender because he's going down this time. Because my lawyer quit, they gave us a continuance. I went on the run. I ain't going to St. Charles. They finally caught me. They locked me up. It was a different judge. I ended up not going to St. Charles. They sent me to a place called Wilder Wilderness Camp in Minnesota. I'm 15 years old. I go to Wilder Wilderness Camp. I get out when I'm 16. I done hit puberty now. I get out. I'm a little bit swole. Come back to the hood. All the kids that used to beat me up when I was little, now I can beat them up. But now I done did a little bit of time. It's even worse now. Now I come to the hood. And I got younger kids looking up to me when I'm 16 years old. I'm a drug dealer at 16 years old. I'm an alcoholic at 16 years old. At 17 years old, I catch my first adult case. I was with a guy that I called my best friend. I remember that morning waking up and one of the guys calling me said, "Hey, shipment came in. Come pick up your stuff." I was like, "All right, cool." After that phone call, my friend comes over. He's got a 6-pack of beer. He comes over. He's like, "Hey, you want a drink?" I'm like, "Nah, I can't. I got to go take care of this business." He's like, "All right." I said, "I'm going to jump in the shower. You want to go to the bank with me?" I had to go to the bank to go pick up money to go do this drug deal. So I jump in the shower. When I'm in the shower, my girlfriend's brother comes over. By the time I get out, they done drank the beer. So they're both a little bit bubbly. I get out. It's like, "Look, I got to go to the bank. Let's ride." We had a little discussion about what car we're going to take. I had a car. He had a car. We decided to take his car because his car had the bumping stereo system in it. But he's already drinking. So he's like, "Hey, you drive." I was like, "All right, cool." So I drive. I go to the bank, pick up some money. On the way back, he's like, "Hey, stop at the liquor store." I'm like, "All right, we'll stop at the liquor store when we get back to the hood." He's like, "No, stop at this liquor store." He wants to stop at a liquor store in somebody else's neighborhood. I'm like, "Nah, we'll stop at the liquor store when we get back to our hood." He's like, "Nah, pull over. I want to drive." He didn't want to drive. He wanted me to pull over at that liquor store in somebody else's hood. It's his car. I pulled over. I get out. I get on the payphone. My friend gets out. He goes into the liquor store, and the other guy who owns the car, his name was Sergio, so I refer to him by Sergio. But anyway, sitting in the car, and I'm on the payphone. I'm wearing my gang colors. I'm in the wrong neighborhood. Sure enough, I'm on the payphone. A carload of gangsters pull up. I see them. They see us. They're staring at us hard. My friend Sergio gets scared. He jumps out of the car. He pops the trunk, pulls out a pistol. He literally shows them the pistol's in a holster. He doesn't pull it out like it. He just shows them the pistol like this. They went and parked over there. Sergio gets back in the car. I'm on the payphone. I'm just watching what's going on. I'm telling, "Hey, I'm about to go pick up. I'll come take care of you later on today." Another carload pulls up. They see their buddies. They go pull up next to their buddies. Now we got 2 carloads looking at us in the neighborhood we don't belong in. So they're over there whispering, talking, pointing at us. Sergio gets out the car and starts chasing everybody with a pistol. I'm on the phone like, "Yeah, I got to go." Hang up the phone. At this time, my other friend comes out with the beer. We jump in the car. We got to get out of here before the police get here. We jump in the car. We take off. I jump right back in the driver's seat. We're driving. Sure enough, there's the police behind us. We're on New York Street. We got some police following us. I remember we turned on Lincoln, and there's 2 police cars in front of us. I tell them, "We're about to get pulled over. Hide the pistol, hide the drugs. We're about to get pulled over." Sure enough, we cross over the intersection. We got swarmed. They pull me out of the car, put me on the car, start searching me. They reach in the car, pull out the pistol. They put it on the roof of the car, tell me I'm going to jail. I've been in and out of jail all my life. I'm not worried about it. Okay, I'm going to jail. But this is the first time I get arrested as an adult. They pull him out of the car. I see them pull him out of the car. They pat him down and they pull out a half ounce of cocaine. And I'm thinking in my head, this guy didn't hide the pistol or the drugs. But it's going in one ear and out the other. I get searched. The paddy wagon gets there. I get searched again. They throw me in the back of the paddy wagon. I'm in the paddy wagon for a couple minutes. Paddy wagon door opens up. They put Sergio in the paddy wagon and pull me out the paddy wagon. They put me back up against the paddy wagon. They search me. This time he puts his hand straight down my pants and pulls out my drugs. How do you know I had drugs on me? They just searched me twice. Now I'm going to jail for the pistol and drugs. Now it's a class X felony, 6 to 30 mandatory. We both go to jail. He's got these drugs on him. We both go to jail. In the morning, we go to bond call. They set our bond at $5,000. Sergio's parents owned some stores. They had money. They bonded him out. All the money that I just got from the bank, $5,000, they confiscated it because I had drugs. So now I'm sitting in jail. Sergio got out. It took my family about a month to raise up the other $5,000 to bond me out. I get bonded out, right back to life as usual, going right back to what I was doing before. During this time, we were in a gang war with these guys right here. Nasty gang war. I'm fighting this case. About a year later, These guys started plotting on us. They wanted us all locked up. Part of one of the biggest prison gangs in the country. They run most of the prison. They wanted us locked up. They figured, okay, tell on these guys, get them locked up so we can kill them in prison. So anytime something happened, they were telling on people, or they were even making up stories. Some kid gets kidnapped, he gets shot up full of holes, blames it on me. They come and arrest me, lock me up, charge me with attempted murder. Now I'm locked up in the county jail for attempted murder, and I'm still fighting this other Class X felony. They're both 6 to 30 years. I'm sitting in the county jail, 18 years old, and I started trying to teach myself how to get out of this mess. Opened up a dictionary, opened up some law books, and started trying to fight my case. 18 years old, I started trying to teach myself law. About a year goes by, this little kid that just blamed me for shooting him murdered somebody. His sister and her boyfriend got into an argument and he slapped her. This little kid went and put a bullet in his head for slapping his sister. Now he's locked up. He's locked up and he decides, well, dang, I'm fighting for my life. I'm over here blaming this guy for a crime he didn't commit because the gang told him to. He comes forward and says, look, I don't know who shot me. I got bigger things to worry about. He didn't shoot me. The gang told me to blame him, so I did. They dismissed that case. I go to trial. I call my friend. I said, hey, you got to take the weight for your pistol. He's like, yeah, it was my pistol. I'll take the blame for the pistol. So I go to trial. We call him to the stand. He says, I'm not taking the blame for that pistol. They told him, if you take the blame for the pistol, the Class X that's on him, it's going to go on you because he had drugs on him. So he leaves me hanging. This is my best friend in the whole world. Not until that trial day did I realize that ain't my friend. He set me up. He had that pistol. How did they find that pistol on the seat where I was sitting, where I was driving? And how did they know I had drugs on me when they had already searched me twice? Now he leaves me hanging because he won't take the blame for his old pistol. I get up on the stand and I got a choice to make. I tell the jury it was his pistol. I tell the jury I don't know whose pistol it is. I grew up in the hood. I ain't telling on him. I get up on the stand and say, I don't know whose pistol it is. They found me guilty. I went to prison for a crime that I didn't even commit. They gave me 7 years. I went to prison. They gave me 7 years. I did 3.5 years and I didn't learn a thing. It wasn't long enough, I'll be honest. It wasn't long enough. I didn't learn a thing. What happened was it made it worse. Now, because of this gang war we were involved in, all the guys are getting locked up. So when I get out, now I done went and did some time. I'm one of the older guys. I get out, I'm immediately a gang leader. Went right back to selling drugs. The craziest thing is I get out of prison. I end up partying that night, hanging out, wake up in the morning. My little brother says, hey, I got to go take care of some business. You want to go with me? He didn't tell me what we were doing. Sure, let's go. We get there. The first day out of prison, I'm involved in a 1/4 kilo of cocaine drug deal. My brother tells me, hey, we're going to go sell this thing to this guy. Every little bit of dream I had for changing my life went out the window. Because after that drug deal, my little brother says to me, he's like, you just came home. This was your brother's client. Now it's yours. And gave me all the money he just made out of the drug deal. I had planned on going to join the carpenters union because I had taken some carpenters classes while I was in prison. All that changed when he handed me the drug money. So now I'm a gang leader immediately, and I'm right back to being a drug dealer. I didn't learn a thing. This gang war is still going on. I get out in the most violent time Aurora has ever had, the early 90s. We're doing all kinds of crazy things, but I'm doing the same thing I was doing before. I lasted 60 days. I was out 60 days, ended up right back locked up. We were at a gang party. Some little kid gets shot outside. The police get there to investigate. They want to talk to us. We shut the door on them. We don't want to talk to you. We don't got nothing to say. They're pounding on the door for an hour. I remember we were inside the house, shut all the curtains. After about an hour, we started hearing they were chipping at the door. Thought they were trying to break in and force us to talk to them or to investigate or whatever they were trying to do. Started hearing chipping at the door. I remember we told one of the girls, hey, go answer that door. Tell them we don't want to talk to them. Tell them to get out of here. She went and opened the door. They pushed the door open. I remember I was hiding behind the door. There's the front door. I'm watching just to make sure that she tells them we don't want to talk to them. Get out of here. When they walked in, they turned that way. They saw me. They came and grabbed me. What they grabbed me for? All the young bucks got up and we ended up in a big old fight with the police. They scarred me up. They beat us up and then charged us all with battery because we didn't want to talk to them. We all go to jail. Go to jail. Get out. The next day, they set our bond. Everybody got bonded out. Most of us got bonded out. Now I'm fighting this case. About a year goes by. I go to trial. I lost. Got locked up for battery to the police. I lost. Got locked up in the county. I'm sitting in the county. Right back to the law books. I'll never forget at sentencing. I'm sitting there ready to be sentenced, and my lawyer looks at me and says, hey, you're one of the smartest kids I've ever met. I've never seen anybody that understands the law the way you understand the law. He's like, I've been doing this 30 years, and I've never seen anybody understand the law the way you understand the law. He's like, I have people trying to help themselves all the time. They bring me garbage. He's like, everything you bring me is good. If you get out of this, I'll give you a job. I got out of it that day. They let me go. I come home. I start working for this lawyer. He was paying me minimum wage. I think it was $5.25 back then. I'm making more money on the streets. But he sits me down. He says, listen, if you want to take this serious, I will pay your tuition. If you have problems with schoolwork, I will help you with your homework. If you want to change your life, I will help you. I stayed working for him, but I was still making more money on the streets. Now it's a front. Now I'm running the streets. Every time I'm getting pulled over, Fred, they pull me over. He's like, do they got a warrant? Fred wants to know if you have a warrant. No, sir. Here's your license. Here's your registration. Get out of here. Now he's my cloak of protection while I'm running the streets. I remember him sitting me down one day telling me, he's like, listen, man, I ain't never hired nobody off the streets in all my career. He's like, please don't go get yourself busted in some big drug bust. I'm like, nah, Fred, I got this. I didn't. I remember it was December of 1995. I was getting my hair cut. I was getting my hair cut by a guy named Franco. Watched us grow up. He grew up in the same hood, but he had a nice barber shop. I used to have hair. So he's cutting my hair and he's telling me, hey, how you doing? I was an arrogant little kid. I used it as an excuse to brag. I was like, dude, I'm doing great. I got a job with this attorney. I drive a nice sports car, nice big house, and my woman's a 10. And guess what? I just had my first son. My son was 2 months old. Franco looked at me. He's like, dude, no. Franco was a Christian. He used to preach to us all the time. So Franco tells me, he's like, hey, you can't change halfway. You got to change all the way. He's like, God don't want half of you. God wants all of you. I'm like, man, I ain't trying to hear that, Franco. I'm good. He's like, all right. 2 weeks later, we're at a gang meeting. I was a predator. I was preying on young kids, sending them out to commit heinous crimes in Aurora. I'm at this gang meeting with a bunch of young kids. It was me, the other leader, and then a bunch of kids. And we're telling them, here, take this gun. Don't come back unless you shot somebody. I remember we beat up 3 kids that night. One wanted to be a gang member, beat him up, made him a gang member. One kid left, came back. Did you find somebody? He's like, man, ain't nobody out there. It was January. Snow this deep, freezing outside. It was about 12 o'clock already. Nah, ain't nobody out there. He came back without having shot somebody. We beat him up. The other kid we beat up, this kid right here, he was about 14 years old. We beat him up because he was scared. Because he showed fear, we beat him up. That's the kind of predators we were. That night we left. I left with a kid I didn't even get along with. We talked to him the other day, and he says, I know why we didn't get along. We had never had the conversation before. I said, I know why we didn't get along. I said, tell me your theory. I'll tell you mine. He told me his theory. I said, we didn't get along because we both had giant egos. So we didn't get along. But we got in that car together that night to go home. We never made it home. We went to a liquor store, picked up some beer, picked up some snacks. We're driving through the neighborhood. On our way home, I remember he was having trouble figuring out whether he was going to go to his sister's house or his girlfriend's house. So we're driving home. We're on Union Street. 1 o'clock in the morning, we come up to the stoplight. There's a car in front of us. It's dead out. There's a car in front of us at the stoplight. The light turns green. The car doesn't move. I go to pull around the car. I tell him, hey, check and see what's up with that car. He had to roll down the window. It was back in the early 90s. A lot of cars still had windows that rolled down. He rolls down the window because my windows were tinted really, really dark. He looks in the car. There's two guys in the car with skull caps and hoodies on. One of the guys pulls out a pistol. He pulls out a pistol. Now we're in a shootout. And I could have left these guys behind. I was driving a 1976 Cutlass Supreme with a 455. I could have left that car in the dust. We thought they were gangbangers trying to get us, so we just ended up in a shootout. We take off. We're in this shootout. We left them behind, let them catch up again, started shooting again. I ended up seeing some red and blue lights. There's police in the area, but we can't see through the houses. I don't know where the car's at. I'm flying down Downer, and here's the car on Lincoln. I almost crashed into this police car. I remember spinning out, spun out. My car hit the curb. The police are facing this way. We're facing that way. In my mind, I'm thinking, okay, we're going to jail for this pistol because whoever it is we're shooting at, they're going to take off. We're going to jail for this pistol. Instead, the police got out of the car. No hands up, no freeze, no nothing. They got out of the car and just immediately started shooting at us. I remember my window blowing up in my face. I remember getting scared. I just ducked and I hit the gas. And the car I was driving, it took off. Peeled tires. I remember losing control and I hit a brick wall. Hit a brick wall. I'm going to jump out the car. He jumped out the car. He's gone. I can't get my door open. I remember pushing the window out, jumping out the car. They're already right there. Snatch me up, take me to jail. I remember waking up in the morning, calling my boss. Hey, Fred, I got bond call in the morning. You going to be there? He's like, man, they're not giving you no bond. He's irritated. I'm irritated. It's like 7 in the morning. I said, look, Fred, I got bond at 9 o'clock in the morning. You going to be there or not? He's like, they're not giving you no bond, man. They're talking about making your bond $5 million. Fred, are you going to be there or not? He said, they're not giving you no bond, man. You shot a police officer last night. I ain't shooting no police officer. They shot at us. We didn't shoot at them. He's like, yeah, you shot a police officer last night. They're going to make your bond $5 million. I said, dude, we did not shoot at them police. They shot at us. We didn't shoot at them. He's like, no, that other car, that was 2 undercover police officers and one of them got shot. My heart sank. Like, what? He's like, yeah, one of them guys got shot. They already talking about your bond's going to be $5 million. My heart sank because I was working for Fred. I used to read all the laws that were coming out. January 1st, 1996, the penalty for shooting a police officer went from 6 to 30, how it normally was, to 20 to 60. They categorized it just like a murder. A murder is 20 to 60 years in Illinois. So I remembered that. But we didn't know they were police officers. Sure enough, I went to court that morning. They made my bond $5 million. I'm sitting in the county jail, losing everything. I'm sitting in the county jail right back in the books. I remember when I'm sitting in the county jail, my guys were not taking care of me. My woman lost the house, lost the car. My kids ain't eating. I remember picking up the phone and calling that guy Franco, was always preaching to me. I tell him, hey, Franco, I'm hurting. My family's hurting. Franco went and introduced himself to my wife with a bag of groceries. They became friends. Franco became a big part of my life. Uh, and he continued to help my family the whole time I was gone. I'm sitting in prison. They ultimately went to trial. We didn't know they were police officers. We got found not guilty of them being police officers, but one of them got shot. We got sentenced for one of them getting shot as a civilian. They gave me 45 years. I'm sitting in prison. I remember I turned about 27 years old, and literally, like from one day to the next, the light bulb turns on in my head. I just wasted half my life for some garbage. I just wasted half my life for some nonsense. But I'm going to get out someday. I'm going to make it to where when I get out, I'm going to change. I'm sitting in prison, and ultimately I ended up getting my case reversed on appeal, and it got knocked down from 45 to 20 years. I ended up doing 10 years straight. But I didn't know if I was ever going to come home. In 2002, this happened. These guys got rounded up. One of them got arrested and didn't want to go to jail and told everything he knew since they were kids. They ended up charging 30 something guys with cold case murders that had never been solved. They didn't know what happened. This guy started telling. They charged all these guys with a bunch of cold case murders, stuff that this guy, for instance, a murder that had happened 18 years prior. Some of these guys were living whole different lives, had jobs, had families, get their door kicked in, you paying for something you did 18 years ago. A lot of these guys got life in prison. That happened. I didn't know if I was ever going to come home. I'm sitting in prison. I'm trying to prepare myself. And then in 2005, this happened. These are the guys I grew up with. So I didn't know if I was coming home. They got rounded up by the feds. All these guys got life, except I think two of them. This kid right here, I grew up with him. This is one of my best friends in the whole world. Grew up with him. This is my brother. My brother got 20 years. So this gang forcing us to come to this meeting, well, forcing them, I should say, I was locked up, forcing them to come to these meetings. My brother goes to the meeting. Why am I here? I'm retired. They're like, oh, we need you. Where were you when I was raising my kids by myself? Oh, we need your help. We need your money. You're an older guy. We want you to help run these kids. He's like, where were you when I was raising my kids by myself? We need money. I got money, but why am I going to give you my kids pizza money? I don't want to be here. They said, hey, we'll give you drugs so you can make money. And my brother accepted those drugs. A small amount of drugs linked him into that conspiracy. He ended up getting 20 years. The only reason he didn't get life is because he's on recording saying, I don't want to be here. He was protesting. Why am I even here? He ended up getting 20 years. He was one of the only ones that didn't get life. This other kid right here, 18 years old, got life in prison. Every time I talk about him, it hurts. 18 years old. He's my cousin. He's never coming home. He never got to experience life, and he's going to die in prison. Every time I talk about him, it's this guy hasn't experienced life. He's never been fishing on a boat. There's so many things that he's never done. But the choices we make, we have to pay for. So this is going on. I didn't know if I was ever going to come home. I didn't know if they were going to come get me. But I knew that if they let me out, I wanted to change. I spent the 10 years I was in prison being a jailhouse lawyer. When I got out, I left Aurora. I moved to Georgia. I moved to Georgia and I got a job with an attorney. I got a job with an attorney, started practicing law. I was a paralegal. And within 6 months of coming home, I was building my own house, raising my kids, trying to be the best I could be to leave all this behind. The life and the choices I was making were mostly based on my surroundings of what I thought was normal. I thought I was supposed to be a gangster. Everybody else around me was. I thought I was supposed to be a drug dealer. Everybody else around me was. Fortunately, I didn't get life in prison. I was sitting in prison when I mentally grew up and realized that I was throwing my life away. I decided to make a change. Some people don't get that opportunity. When I came home, I still keep in contact with some of these guys because I grew up with some of these guys. This guy was literally my neighbor, lived right across the street from me. We grew up together. That's how we ended up in the same gang. He got life in prison. He's never coming home. This other guy, best friend growing up, life in prison. I'm talking about we've been so close, we've never even had an argument. As friends, we've never even had a disagreement. But he's going to die in prison too. I was blessed that I got arrested apart from that. I ain't bitter at nobody for having spent 10 years in prison. I literally was just upstairs and officially met the state's attorney that locked me up. I don't know if he's maybe one of you guys' professors, but Drew Cisnowski upstairs was the prosecutor on my case. I just found out that that lawyer that I used to work for, that dude cared about me. He just told me that I didn't ever know. He said, yeah, Fred he used to hound me about you. I could not walk into the same room without Fred coming to me and saying, hey, this guy's not what you think he is. Give him a chance. I didn't know that. I didn't know my lawyer, aside from helping me in court, was literally trying to tell this guy, give this guy a chance. I didn't recognize the chance Fred gave me. My legal mentor, his name was Fred Morelli. He just passed away a couple years ago. He was the attorney that gave me a job. He saw something in me as a kid that I didn't see in myself. When I turned about 27 years old, I was in prison. I realized what he had done for me. And I realized a lot of other people in my life that I didn't recognize when I was little. When I was 13 years old, all these counselors in the youth home were telling me, dude, you're a smart kid. Why are you gangbanging? I went to a juvenile prison in Minnesota. And when I was there, they gave me a test to find out where I'm supposed to be in school. My test came back 12-9. I was 15 years old. My test came back 12-9. That's graduated, 12th year, 9th month. They're like, dude, what are you doing in the 7th grade? I got kicked out of school in 7th grade. I got expelled. Came back the following year, got expelled again within 3 months. I was in an alternative school with everybody in the alternative school was in the opposite gang than me. Every day I went to school, I got into a fight. But I had people telling me, dude, what are you doing in 7th grade? You're a smart kid. I had people politicking for me that I didn't even recognize as a kid. When I came home at 16 years old, they had a board meeting. People from Minnesota sent letters, and people from the youth home here in Kane County were there for me saying, this kid does not belong in 7th grade. Give this kid a chance. He didn't get kicked out of high school. He got kicked out of junior high. Let's place him in the 10th grade where he belongs and give him a chance. Everybody in the room was there to try to get me a chance, except one person, probation officer. She's like, no, he's a thug. Unless he goes to school for 90 days, no fights, no absences, and does all his work, I won't even consider it. I remember getting up that day. Do you not understand that every time I come to school, I get into a fight? I passed the 7th grade in 32 days. I attended school 32 days that year, and I passed because I didn't have no friends. Every day I would come into school and I'd do a week's worth of work in one day because I didn't have no friends. By 3 o'clock, I was getting into a fight. It was so ingrained in us that we knew. I was in an alternative school where they would literally take you and they would throw you in a timeout room. It was a little 4x4 room. They'd take your shoes, they'd take your belt, they'd take anything you had on and toss you in this room all day until 3:30 when the buses take you home. So I remember we would get into a fight at 3 o'clock. That means we only gonna be in the timeout room for like a half hour. And literally all day talking crazy to each other until 3 o'clock comes, getting into a fight. I used to get beat up every day. I didn't want to go to school. So that day at that board meeting, I got up, I literally flicked everybody off and said, I quit. She said, if you leave this room, you're going back to jail. Do what you want, but I'm done. I'm 16 years old. I quit. And I quit school at 16 years old. But I wasn't a dummy. Obviously, at 18 years old, I started teaching myself law. I retired in 2017, paralegal. Been home from prison 12 years and I retired. Who does that? Somebody that came where I came from and was able to retire within 12 years. It's about choices. You guys are young. You guys are the future. Start making good choices with your lives now. Just because you're in college doesn't mean that you're not going to be exposed to the opportunity to make bad decisions. Please make it a point. Whatever your career is, view those people and try to figure out how they ended up here instead of just looking at what they did. I look at myself and I don't make no excuses. I ain't bitter at nobody. I ain't bitter at nobody. But I truly believe that I made all the decisions because the lifestyle was normalized as I was growing up. I was immune to violence. I was desensitized to violence. I thought selling drugs was what my career was supposed to be. And there's a lot of kids out there that think the same way. Like I said, I'm normally talking to high school kids and at risk youth. And I want them to understand there's a predator somewhere looking to take your life and to indoctrinate you into this garbage that I was indoctrinating kids into. I do this, I share my story because I want people to recognize that there's people like me out there, like I was out there. We were literally in the business of killing kids. We were selling something that wasn't real. We weren't telling these kids, you're going to end up in prison for the rest of your life. Nah, we were selling the nice cars, the women, the parties. That sells. Prison and death don't sell. I was a predator preying on kids that were easily impressionable. That's why I share my story, because I want the world to know that it's propaganda. And I want these kids to understand when you see it, recognize it and be able to say no. So, whatever career you decide, try to understand. That's all I can ask of you guys. I hope you guys end up being the social workers, the probation officers, and finding ways to fix the problems instead of taking kids and locking them up and throwing away the key. Because it's real. This lifestyle is real. I ain't mad at nobody. I ain't mad at, I love my dad. I learned a lot from my dad. Morally, I learned a lot from him, even though he was a gangster. My mom, I love her to death. I have heartbreaking stories about the things that we've gone through because the lifestyle we were living. Some young lady just asked me about my mom. My mom passed away a couple years ago. I share a story with you, how it affects not just the person, but everybody around. My mom's 75th birthday. I'm successful. Mom, what do you want for your birthday? Anything you want. What you want? My mom looked at me. She said, all I want is to see my three boys together again. She hadn't seen us together in 30 years because at 18 years old, I went to prison. My little brother joined me in prison. When I got out, my older brother was in prison. When he got out, I went back. So my mom hadn't seen us together since the early 90s, and it never got to be. My brother didn't get out of prison before she passed away, but he changed his life. My brother came home 3 years ago and made a success out of himself. All it took was a change of mentality. He owns his own business, started owning his own business within 3 months of coming home. It's about the choices. Sometimes we don't get the chance to make the right choices before our life is over. Sometimes that's all it takes is one bad choice. So please, whatever you guys get into, please recognize that we have to find ways to fix these kids and fix our society as a whole instead of just taking them, locking them up, and throwing away the key. Because it is possible to change. My dad died of alcohol, man. My dad died of cirrhosis of the liver when I was 18 years old, man. So uh, the last speech I just did in his class right before coming here was actually about drugs and alcohol and the impact that it has on us that spans generations sometimes, and how it affects not just the person that's on the drugs and alcohol, but the people around them. I did have a little bit of support I didn't recognize because it wasn't brought to me in that detail. They weren't saying we're here to help you because, you know, I don't know that anybody else knew my story. You know what I mean? I just knew that I had people that were trying to help me because they recognized that I was an intelligent little kid and was probably mixed up in the wrong things. Um, I will say this: I wouldn't change anything in my life for the world because I truly believe that I have a purpose that has to do with how I came to be and how I came to be what I am today. And I think it's probably to help at risk youth. That's been my passion for 20 years, and I'm going to continue to do it until I find the permanent path that I'm supposed to be on. I do a lot of presentations, but I try to guide kids and parents into understanding that you got to get these kids into something. Right now, I own a martial arts school, and I try to funnel kids into martial arts because I mentioned it earlier. The reality is gangbanging is addictive. It is an addiction. The adrenaline, the things that you go out and you do, there is an adrenaline rush. I found that adrenaline rush, the same adrenaline rush, in competing in martial arts. I didn't know it until I competed in martial arts. It's like I remember this feeling, and that's what kind of got me to start trying to say, "Hey, get your kids into something." Catching that touchdown, I'm sure it's the same feeling. Hitting that home run, I'm sure it's the same feeling. Um, so us by nature, we're looking for something like that. And so now I use martial arts because I used to just say, get them into wrestling, get them into football. Then I realized, wait a minute, all that's seasonal. And when my kids growing up, I had them from one sport to the next all year long, from one sport to the next to try to get them off the streets for at least the time that they would be there. Yeah, I think so. Yes, I think all of us as humans are looking for that rush in something. Anybody else? In there, no. In there, I'll be honest with you, I had to keep a face on to survive. I stayed out of trouble as much as I could, but I got into plenty of trouble because that lifestyle, just because I was in prison, um, it didn't go away, but I was able to stay out of trouble a lot because I was a jailhouse lawyer, and who I was, I guess I had plenty of respect that I didn't have people looking at me all the time. Education. Education. I had somebody reach out to me from an organization in Chicago recently wanting to interview people that got their education in prison and how it made a difference. I don't know the statistics now, but I remember back then, I don't have a bachelor's degree. And the only reason I don't have a bachelor's degree is because they pulled the bachelor's programs out of the prisons. Uh, but I remember back then, somebody was pushing the stats that like only recidivism rates are like above 50%. If you have an associate's degree, it drops it down to something less, like in the 20s or something. But with a bachelor's degree, from what I heard, it had dropped it down to a low number, like in the under single digits, in the single digits. So I know that if that's true, then we need to be pushing education. We need to be pushing rehabilitation as opposed to locking them up, throwing away the key, and let's strip them of everything we possibly can. Because if we give them weights, they're just going to get bigger than us and beat us up. If we give them education, they're going to outsmart us. That's the wrong mentality. I mean, a good education gives somebody an opportunity. One of the things that I truly believed in when I was locked up was I told myself, listen, I'm going to educate myself to the point that when I get out, they don't look at my felonies, they look at my education. And I was blessed. As soon as I came home, I literally stole somebody's job as a paralegal. I went and I did an interview, and they were so impressed. His paralegal was on vacation. And so he was looking for somebody temporarily. I interviewed, I said, I can't take a temporary job. As much as I would love to, I can't. He asked me to help him on a case that he was working on. He asked me to write a brief for him. I took the file home. I wrote the brief. I came back, gave him the brief. That week, he called me in and said, you know what? I'm giving you the job. He literally fired his paralegal while she was on vacation and gave me her job. So I know that education is important for somebody to be able to succeed. Had I had nothing to offer, where would I be working? Had I had nothing to offer, would I be retired now? No. I'll share a story with you. 20 years I've been giving back to the community. I've never needed anything. I had a good job. I have money. I own land. I own property. I own businesses. And when I retired from being a paralegal, I never needed anybody in all these 20 years. About a year ago, because I'm building a house, I sold my house. I'm building another one. And we were looking for a place to stay. We went to my son's basement and I get tired of living with my son. So we were going to go find us an apartment somewhere temporarily until I'm done with what I'm working on now, which is building a couple houses. I could not get housing because of my felony. He's the first person I called. I ranted, didn't I? I ranted. And I recently got my record sealed and expunged thanks to her and State's Attorney Jamie Mosser. And it started because of that situation where I couldn't even get, I've been giving back for 20 years. At what point in time do I get my life back? And that's really what I was ranting to him about. And he says, the invisible ball and chain. It never mattered before, but not everybody's going to be as blessed as me. What about the guy that gets out and can't get a job because of his felony? A guy that gets out and can't even get an apartment. What are they going to turn to? They're going to turn right back to what they know. Oh, society ain't here to help me. And they're going to turn right back to what they know because they're going to feel I got set up. I messed up, but now they set me up to be part of this revolving door. And believe me, everybody that's been to prison sees the revolving door. And if it's stuck here that you're part of that revolving door, chances are you're going to be part of that revolving door. But how many people are not blessed like me? You know, and that hurts my heart. When it happened to me, I literally out of my mouth, I said, does it not matter what I've been doing for 20 years? And I said that to a person that has absolutely nothing to do with what was going on. That was just the lady that was handing me the report saying you got denied because, you know, she had nothing to do with it, but it just came out of my mouth. What's the point if you can't live your life? I can't hear you. I'm sorry. So your question is based on people that I know that have passed away, was that part of my changing my mind? I thought that was part of life. I thought we were supposed to die in the hood. I literally, I was such a kid that when I turned 18 years old, I thought I had accomplished something. When I turned 18 years old and I wasn't dead, I thought I accomplished something. It's part of the propaganda that we grow up hearing. When you're a kid and you have no other influences other than this negative one, you know, we're sitting here celebrating these guys that died. Oh, here's a little drink for you. But I don't remember ever knocking on that guy's family's door and saying, here, we're sorry we killed your kid. Let us help you. It wasn't part of what we were taught. But you know, that's the thing that I tell kids now. They not selling you no retirement. You joining the gang, they ain't selling you no retirement. You die for this thing, they're not gonna go pay your bills. They're not gonna raise your kids. That's not what they're being taught. They're being taught, oh look, he died for the cause. He's a hero now. Somebody's gonna get his name tattooed on them. That's what he's gonna get.